Hi there, Rich Leiter here, and welcome to the Naked Booktuber. Today I'm going to do a review of The Seawolf by Jack London. Now, I had read Martin Eden by Jack London about a week ago. I did a review of that, and I really loved the book. I thought it was a great work of literature. One fellow listened to my review and he said, well, if you like Martin Eden, you're going to really like The Seawolf. It's even better. So I decided to read The Seawolf. I didn't like The Seawolf. I was very disappointed with it. As much as I loved Martin Eden, not so much I did not like The Seawolf. Okay, so the plot of The Seawolf is this. There's a character named Humphrey Van Weyden, who is on a vessel, I guess in San Francisco Bay. He's going someplace, and his vessel collides with another ship, and it sinks. And so now he's in the water of San Francisco Bay drowning. And along comes a schooner, a seal hunting schooner named the Ghost. And the captain of this seal hunting schooner spots Van Weyden foundering in the water, drowning, and he fishes him out of the water. Now, Van Weyden assumes that the captain of the schooner is going to just bring him back to San Francisco. It's right over there. And then go about his way. But instead of returning Van Weyden to Frisco, he impresses him into service on board his seal hunting schooner. Van Weyden is astounded. He says, "What are you doing? Just take me back. There's San Francisco right over there. Just drop me off." The captain won't do this. The captain says, "No, you're impressed, and you're just going to have to stay here for the 3 or 4 months that we're going to be seal hunting, and then you'll come back. And I'll give you a salary too as a cabin boy. How's that?" And of course, Van Weyden is astounded and doesn't like this very much. The rest of the novel, or most of the novel, is basically Van Weyden's account of what it is like being on this schooner which has rescued him, the Ghost, under the command of the captain, whose name is Wolf Larsen. He is the Seawolf in this book. Now, as it turns out, the captain, the Seawolf, is not a very nice man. He's a very, very brutal, cruel commander. Not only that, he's really kind of a sociopath without any conscience at all. He's a very intelligent man. He's self-educated. Intellectually, he's a very curious person, but he's still a sociopath. He has no compunction about hurting other people, even killing people. As long as it suits his interests. He's a real wacko, nut job, although an extremely clever one, and an extremely physically strong one as well. And that's it. And so he terrorizes his crew, the Seawolf. He terrorizes Van Weyden, and most of the novel, I say 2/3 of the novel, is almost written in a journalistic or diary-like way. Almost. It doesn't go by dates, today we did this, today we did that. But it is written in a way such that it's an episodic sort of a narrative where you see all of the vicissitudes of life aboard this schooner under the command of this brutal captain. And then in the last third of the book, the situation changes slightly. Well, I'm not going to go into it. That's basically the plot of the book. Now, I had some problems with this book, and here they are. This is why I didn't care for it very much. The character of Wolf Larsen, as I said several times, and I'll probably say in the future several times, he is a sociopathic, a self-made, self-educated, highly intelligent, if not brilliant, sociopath. He's able to discuss literature and, oh, by the way, Van Weyden, this person he fishes out of San Francisco Bay and impresses into service, is kind of a dilettante, kind of a dandyish dilettante. He's an extremely well-educated, upper middle class or wealthy young man who really doesn't have to work for a living. He has a passive income. He spent his time on land before this being impressed into service by the Seawolf. He spent his time as a dilettante, doing literary reviews that were published in literary magazines and so on. He's a very moralistic person, high-minded, idealistic, dandyish person, kind of a silly person in my opinion. And so when he's impressed into service, when he's not being a cabin boy, being intimidated and brutalized by the captain, the captain and he have these intellectual conversations about literature and about philosophy, because he's the only person. Van Weyden is the only person on board the schooner that the Seawolf can actually speak to in any sort of an intellectual way. Everybody else is just a sailor, an illiterate, kind of brutish sailor there. So he's the only person that he can talk to. Now, some people have posited that Wolf Larsen, the Seawolf, this person with no morals at all, with no ideals at all, who just believes in might makes right, who scoffs at the notion that man has a soul or a spirit, the kind of person who believes that it's really all about the survival of the fittest, that all living creatures are just microbes, yeast as he calls it, and each yeasty thing. And the purpose of life is for one yeasty thing to try to gain dominance over the next. That's basically what life is all about to Wolf Larsen. It's a very mechanistic, I guess, crude, materialistic view of things. And yet, at the same time, it's a view which has been adopted by a person who has great intellect too. And he's he's a very brutal sort of person, sadistic. You understand this about the Seawolf very early on in the book. This is the kind of character he has. And his character does not change throughout the book. It does not develop any. It basically stays as it is. And that's it. I mean, it doesn't progress from there. He doesn't evolve in any way. I did not find Wolf Larsen, the Seawolf, to be as profound a character as Captain Ahab, or on the same high note, the high level that Captain Ahab is. So I didn't find him a particularly interesting character. I mean, he's kind of curious in the fact that he's so intelligent, but again, coupled to his completely mechanistic, amoral, sociopathic nature, once you get that, you got it, He doesn't change any throughout the novel. I didn't find the character of Humphrey Van Weyden, the poor fellow he impresses into service, particularly interesting either. As I say, he's kind of a silly, dandyish kind of a character, highly prone to moralizing, didn't care for him. He's kind of a weak character, in my opinion, as well. There was nothing about him that I was particularly drawn to. Again, using the analogy of the novel Moby Dick, I found that Ishmael, even though Ishmael's character devolves into kind of an amorphous character as Moby Dick progresses, even so, I found that the character of Ishmael was far more interesting than Humphrey Van Weyden was. There's a character, a female character, that is introduced into this book about 2/3 of the way through. Her name is Maud Brewster. She is also a castaway. She was on a pleasure trip to go to Japan. Something happened to her. I forget what it was now, whether she was just a castaway. She was stranded. And again, she too is picked up by the Seawolf on the schooner, his schooner, the Ghost. She's fished out of the water just like Van Weyden was. And once she expects to be transported to Japan, which is about 600 miles away. And again, the Seawolf pulls the same shit on her that he did on Van Weyden. He says, nothing doing. He says, you're staying with us for the remainder of our seal hunting expedition, and then maybe we'll drop you off at the nearest port or something. And of course, Maud Brewster, she also, by coincidence, Van Weyden is a literary dilettante, a very sensitive, not very physical literary dilettante, as the novel opens. Well, Maud Brewster is a very delicate flower. She turns out to be a poetess and a literary figure. And it also turns out, small world, that Van Weyden had actually done a review of one of Maud Brewster's poems. And while they're on board the Ghost, the schooner, when the Seawolf and she and Van Weyden are having dinner one day, they discover that he has actually reviewed one of her poems, Small World, and they talk about it. And as the novel progresses, they develop a very strong physical attraction to each other, as well as, an emotional attraction to each other. And so the last third of the book, they have kind of a love affair, which I found kind of hokey. I found it kind of not appropriate, not really that believable. Many passages in the last third of the Seawolf. Humphrey Van Weyden is describing his immense love of this idealized ethereal creature, Maud Brewster, which I found slightly ridiculous. When Maud and Humphrey Van Weyden finally escape, I won't go into all of the details, when they finally escape the schooner, the Ghost, and they escape the Seawolf, they escape in a boat, and they just sail off in the middle of the night out to sea, hoping to sail 600 miles and finally reach the coast of Japan and be safe from the evil clutches of the Seawolf. It's kind of ridiculous. As I said at the beginning of the novel, it's Van Weyden makes it very clear that he has absolutely no experience sailing. He can't even swim. And obviously Maud Brewster has no knowledge of sailing, and she can't swim. And yet they decide to escape in this boat and just sort of founder out at sea, hoping that they're going to reach land. He has learned a few rudimentary skills about sailing. It's true, once he comes aboard the Ghost, but it's not that much. And they're kind of and he doesn't know anything about navigation. He forgot to bring a sextant with him, I think he just relies on a handheld compass. And so they're foundering out at sea, kind of keeping their fingers crossed that they're not going to capsize and they're going to reach the coast of Japan. And throughout a large part of this, he is waxing eloquent about how much he loves Maud Brewster. It seems totally inappropriate to me, almost comical. That's something else that I found did not help this novel at all. Another thing that I did not like about this book was there was a lot of technical sailing jargon in this book, coming, as I say, from a narrator who purportedly knows nothing about sailing. And the more the book goes on, the more technical are the phrases which are dropped by Humphrey Van Weyden. For instance, at one point, Humphrey Van Weyden, the non-sailor who cannot swim, says, running off before the wind with everything to starboard, he came about, returned, close hold on the poor tack. Interesting. Then he says at another point, we ran down the flying jib, hoisted, let me do that again. We ran down the flying jib, hauled the jib sheets to windward, and the main sheet flat and came up into the wind. Wow, fascinating stuff, you know. And I came on deck to find the Ghost heading up close on the port tack and cutting into windward of a familiar spritsail, close hauled on the same tack ahead of us. Fascinating stuff. I mean, the whole book is peppered with, and this is nothing. He has whole paragraphs where he's talking in great technical detail about hauling tacks and setting up sails and such jargon. I mean, if you're a sailing buff, or if you're a retired merchant marine who is now reading The Sea Wolf in your merchant marine home for the retired, okay, I guess you could follow all this technical sailing jargon. I mean, I couldn't. You know, I kind of understood it in a general way, but beyond that, you know, it was kind of Greek to me, and I got tired after a while of looking up every single sailing term in Wikipedia. I mean, there's one part in the book where, through a whole series of events, the schooner, the Ghost, the sail, no, not the sails, the masts of the schooner are sawed off, and the boat is shipwrecked on an island, which is where Humphrey Van Weyden and Maud Brewster are. And he tries to repair the schooner so that they can leave the island. And there are so many passages, technical jargon about how he's going to try to haul the mast back onto the boat and slip it into the location where it can rest, sort of like putting the peg into the hole. It's extremely technical, talking about tacks and fulcrums and different kinds of masts and different kinds of sails and what he did, and it was not interesting to me at all. I couldn't follow it in any more than a general way, the way I just described it to you. This, to me, seriously sabotaged the book. I don't know why. This seems to be rather self-indulgent of Jack London to go into this kind of a detail about sailing. Didn't do anything at all for me. Another thing that I found, the main thing that I found that seriously marred the book for me, that there were so many holes in the plot. We're presented, for instance, with this sadistic, sociopathic Captain Wolf Larson, the Sea Wolf. Now, apparently this guy has a reputation for being quite ruthless. He's responsible for the murder of 2 men on his own ship. He's responsible for a lot of cruelty on board his own ship. One person, the cook of his sailing vessel, he wants to punish. So he punishes him by lashing him to a rope and throwing him overboard as the ship is moving, and dunking him in. And as a wave comes, he's underwater. and then maybe 30 seconds later he emerges again, takes a swallow of air, and it goes back down again, goes back up again. So he's kind of like choking and drowning. And this is the punishment. And then eventually Wolf Larsen says, okay, haul him back in. So when they're hauling back in the cook, just as he's above the water, a big shark comes along and bites off the cook's foot. It amputates his foot up to the ankle. And they pull him in, -1 foot. Wolf Larsen's responsible for that too. So this man is completely out of control. You can bet your bottom dollar that he's pulled the same shit on previous whaling voyages too. On previous seal hunting voyages, expeditions. I mean, he is impressed into service against their will, Humphrey Van Weyden, and he is also impressed into service Maud Brewster. So he's kidnapped people too. You can bet your bottom dollar he's done this previously. So the first question I have is, what is this sociopath doing, even being the captain of this seal hunting schooner? That's the first problem I have with it. At various points in this novel, the men on the all of the men on his schooner, all of his crew, hate this man. Can't stand him. Here's the way it's described. Wolf Larsen it was, always Wolf Larsen, enslaver and tormentor of men, a male Circe, and these, meaning his crew, his swine, suffering brutes that groveled before him and revolted only in drunkenness and in secrecy. And I, too, meaning Humphrey Van Weyden, was one of his swine. So the men obviously loathe him, fear him, can't stand him. He's extremely brutal to them. He's sadistic. He's responsible for killing some of them. The obvious question is, why don't the men just mutiny and kill him and end it? There is a mutiny on the ship at one point, but not all the men partake in it. But there are many, and the mutiny is quelled, but there are many other instances, opportunities during the course of the voyage for the men to mutiny and just kill this maniac. Why don't they do it? I don't understand that. That is a gaping hole in this novel. Another thing is that there are, for instance, but there are certain members of the crew who, while they are sailing on their sealing hunt expedition, there are several men who hate the captain for his cruelty so much that they actively try to kill him. There are two seamen, Leach and Johnson, who he is flogged and brutally beaten, and they try to kill him. And everybody else on board the ship loathe him. My question is, how the hell can a captain function as a captain on a ship when several of his men are actively trying to kill him? It's like, how do you put out a fire in a building when the firemen who are in the fire truck rushing to the fire are trying to kill the fire chief, are trying to kill the driver of the fire truck? How do you function as a unit? This is kind of unbelievable to me. So I find that I found that this, accepting this premise that these men just let themselves be brutalized in this fashion, plus all of this technical jargon involved that's very hard to follow, plus this kind of corny love affair that develops between Humphrey Van Weyden and Maud Brewster in the last third of the book. All of these things taken together made this novel a very choppy ride for me. I was not at all involved in this novel, intimately involved in this novel the way I was with Martin Eden. Martin Eden, as I say, was an event to me. This novel was just so uneven. After I'd read half the book, I wanted to put it down, but I forced myself to finish it, just for the sake of finishing it. It was not a very memorable read. The quality of the writing was okay. It was competent. It wasn't like it was it was badly written. It had a lot of flaws in it. Now, just as an aside, I did a little research on it, and it has been posited by some people in their interpretation of the character of Wolf Larsen, the sea wolf, that Jack London was trying to debunk the whole notion of the Nietzschean Superman as typified by Wolf Larsen. To some people, Wolf Larsen typifies or symbolizes the kind of Superman that Nietzsche talks about. Well, I don't know about that. Maybe he was and maybe he wasn't. But it sounds like a very, very simplistic notion of Nietzsche's Superman. I don't think anyone really has a clear conception of what Nietzsche's Superman was like. He doesn't talk about it very much, Nietzsche. I think he just mentions him once in Thus Spake Zarathustra. The interpretations of what the Superman is, what Nietzsche meant by him, is there are many interpretations, and this seems to be a very, very simplistic interpretation. If you're trying to equate the amorality and mechanistic materialism of a Wolf Larsen with a Nietzschean Superman. I don't know. It just seems very simplistic to me. It's possible. Maybe that's what Jack London was shooting for. I don't know. In a similar vein, some people have posited that the character of Wolf Larsen is symbolic of capitalism. Apparently Jack London was a socialist in real life, and perhaps some people have opined this is Jack London's way of knocking capitalism, the predatory, amoral nature of capitalism. You do whatever you can for profit, and if it involves killing people or torturing them or poisoning their water or the environment, so be it, because you've made a buck. Some people have said that. Maybe that's true too. I frankly don't really care about these different interpretations of the character of Wolf Larsen. I'm more concerned about the quality of the writing and the quality of the characters. And I did not care very much for the intensity of the story. I didn't care for this, for the quality of the writing. I didn't care for the plot. It was so choppy. I didn't think the characters were static to me. You found out that Wolf Larsen is a very, very intelligent, if not brilliant, sociopath early on in this novel. You get that. And his character remains kind of static throughout the rest of the novel. It doesn't go anywhere. Hub's character, to me, although he does learn to be a bit more independent, to get a little bit more cojones as the novel progresses. He's not so much the dandyish, the foppish, literary dilettante that he was before he was impressed into service. That's true, but he's still kind of a weak, namby-pamby character to me. He's a very, very, very sententious character to me. I didn't care for him either. Moore Brewster is also very, very moralistic, idealistic in a kind of a silly way to me. No wonder those two fall in love with each other. The characters were not memorable for me with the same intensity that they were in say, a Moby Dick, or in A Heart of Darkness. The character of Kurtz, or the character of Kurtz has a great air of mystery about him as well. I didn't find that air of mystery about him in the character of Wolf Larsen. So that's it. I still maintain that I was just bowled over by Martin Eden, and life is funny. I was surprised at how underwhelmed I was by the Seawolf. Thank you.